Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Oops. I don't have the board up. Bam. Okay. I mean, it's not a bad mistake. Anyway. So I got the as promised, I have you guys' solution to the problem I gave you last video. At the end of the video, I'll be giving you guys another puzzle. So like I said, this one was the blockade. Was a blockade theme, and I had to admit, man, this one was hard. Like, I went through and looked at it, I was like, dude, like, how do people see this stuff, man? I don't know, it's crazy. Anyway, so to start off with, we have rook to g6. That move just by itself is a really, really hard move to find. It's almost impossible, I think, because it looks like you're just completely throwing away a rook. But of course, if the king takes, you have bishop to h5 with check, picking up the rook because the king has to go back. So you got the rook moving away here. Now you have bishop h5 coming, and you have b4 trying to create some type of counterplay on the queen side. You got queen to g5, just tightening up everything. You got pawn takes c3, pawn takes c3, rook to b2. You got king up to g3. Not worry about it. Queen, rook to c2, and queen to e7. Rook takes c3 with check. King up to h4. We got king to h8. So we have rook takes h6. And so g takes h6. We got queen down to f6. And once the rook blocks, we're gonna have bishop to g6, and there's not a way to stop checkmate coming. And so that was a pretty long and complicated one, but that was the answer. Now to the game. As you guys know from the thumbnail, Wesley So is the Champions Chess Tour Skilling Open champion. And so I've kind of already given you guys the answer. I think a lot of you guys have seen what occurred, or you at least got the news. Wesley So did secure victory in the Skilling Open, and this is one of the final games from that. If you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look at this here. So we have e4, we got c6, d4, d5, and so we're going. We got we got the Caro-Kann on the board. Kind of similar to what you saw a couple games ago. Went ahead and went Caro-Kann here, and so we see e5. So we got the advanced variation on the board. So bishop to f5, knight to f3, e6, bishop e2, and this is probably the most typical way. The most heavily played way to play the Caro-Kann advanced variation. And so we have h6, and so we have castles, and so we have knight to e7. We got a4, trying to prevent any type of b5 situations from coming, especially if you want to move knight here. It's just kind of annoying. Helps you push c4 also. So we got a5, no more expansion on the queen side here. So we have knight b to d2. So knight to d7 and knight to b3. And so we have knight back to h7. So we got bishop to d2. And we got queen to b6. And it's at this point in the game that we have the novelty. As you guys saw in a couple of the previous videos, you saw queen b6 also. It's kind of, I mean, it's not a horrible move, but it's definitely kind of like very, very sideline. Enough to where it's the first time it's ever been seen in play. So yeah, I mean, you got your king in the center of the board. You're not castled, so queen b6 isn't like the most fundamental way to play. With these close positions though, one of the things about it, when you do have close positions, it's not as unsafe to kind of waste a tempo or two in this situation. When the positions are really tactical and they're really open in the center of the board, you have to get your king castled as quickly as possible. Since that's not really the case here, you kind of do have a little tempo or two to waste. So Carlsen says, hey, I'm gonna go queen b6. So we got h3, and so we have knight to g6. So queen to e1. Trying to give a little triple attack on this pawn here. And because of queen to b6, there really isn't any way to defend it great. So you're kind of forced to go bishop to b4. So we see bishop takes b4, queen takes b4, queen takes b4, and we got a takes b4. And so we got bishop to d3. You know, black has actually kind of, you know, improved their position quite a bit though, you know. They pretty much right about to castle. You know, they don't have the same amount of problems as they had before. And, you know, white's doing very well too. And so we got c5. C5. Let me get my camera fixed up. There we go. Yeah, c5. Basically, if any of you guys out there are kind of looking at this like sideways like this, like, hey, wait a minute, like, isn't this just a pawn? It is. It's just a complete throwaway of a pawn. Like, that's just literally the situation. And the way that Wesley so went ahead and did it, he just said, I'm just gonna snap the pawn off immediately, right? Which is cool. It was actually the second best move played. The absolute best move played is gonna be bishop to b5. Just putting like a real X-clam on the fact that, you know, this knight is protecting this square and trying to basically just get rid of it. And so, you know, if you try to, if you take here, or you try to push pawn here, you're gonna see knight to, not that, you're gonna see knight to c5, and it's just gonna just like put just the absolute utmost pressure on it. And you know, you're gonna be pushing this pawn up, you know, breaking the rook into the game and stuff like that. So, you know, you definitely don't want to be going those routes. You know, you would probably go king to e7. Bishop would take d7 just to eliminate, you know, the defender of that square. And after king takes d7, you just, you know, you snap the pawn off with knight takes c5. And so you're just a clear pawn up here. And, you know, of course, after something like b6, you know, you can just back the knight up here and then put an extra threat on this this pawn here. And so, you know, black just has a lot of issues with their position. So like I said, we just had to direct, you know, knight takes c5. And so we see knight takes c5 and d takes c5. And we have rook to a5. And it's looking really kind of hard to defend that pawn. There's not really any other pawn you can kind of put on the side of it. There's really no piece that you can use to protect it. So if you guys want to stop the video right now and see how Wesley So defends this pawn when it seems impossible, go ahead and stop the video real quick, and I'll be waiting on you. I'll be chilling. Okay, so for those of you that came up with the nice, solid Zwischenzug move of bishop to b5, you good. Like you probably will be in the next skilling or chess championships tour or whatever. This is a nice in between move here, and it basically just disconnects the attack on this pawn and throws its own little attack in there, you know, on the king. And so it's just like it's just the most perfect, you know, in between insert move you can put in. There's no way to block it. The king has to move, and so it just takes full advantage of all of, you know, the either wasted tempo or just the fact the king is in the center. Like it pretty much just is the most perfect move ever in this particular game here. Like I said, it disconnects the rook from taking the pawn. It doesn't allow you know, the king to get castled, and it does protect all in the same in one fell swoop. So we got king to e7. We would have rook f to e1, and rook would come over to c8. We got c3. c5. Yeah, we got c3. And c3 is pretty nifty. I mean, of course, if you know, if you have you know, rook takes here, you got the little fork-ski right here. So you definitely don't want that. Another interesting move was knight to d4. And so it just kind of like, you know, asks the rook if it really wants to capture. And so if you do see the capture, the computer actually gives to capture, and then it gives all of this: knight to b3, a takes b5, pawn takes b5, and then rook takes b5. Literally, these are just computer precision moves that it's giving. And so it's like, this is basically telling you, man, go ahead and give up the exchange. Like, that's the best thing to do. It's crazy. So we got b takes c3, and not taking back, but we have b4. And of course, you know, you can't take en passant because the pawn was already, you know, attacking the other pawn. So this is a really nice in-betweener move here. And so we got rook a to a8. So rook to c1. There really is no way to protect that pawn. And so we got knight to f4. So rook takes c3, bishop to e4. We got pawn to a5. just putting all the pawns on dark squares and making sure that, you know, we have everything solidly protected. We got F6, H4 setting up for G3. We got G5. We have G3 and knight back to G6. And so we take pawn here with check, and then we take back with the king. King takes F6, and we see H takes G5, H takes G5. We got knight to H2, which is, it's a little bit of a strange move. Knight to H2 is a little bit strange. Looking at another variation that we could have had, it would have been, you know, actually, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. This move, if you watched my last video, this move should come to your mind. It's rook takes E4. Just saying, hey, I'm gonna give up the exchange and I'm gonna be good anyway. And so after D takes E4, knight to D2, you know, possibly king to F5, you'd see knight to C4, and you just have a lot of issues. You have this move possibly coming, you have this fork coming. It's just not really something that you want to be involved in. So we got H takes G5, H takes G5, like I said, knight to H2, and so we see knight to E5. So we see knight C to E3. And so we got rook to H8, you know, trying to see if maybe the knight moves, you know, we can try to plop down the checkmate here. And so we have F3, and then a nice little, it's a nifty little, you know, exchange sacrifice. We got rook takes H2, king takes H2, rook takes F3, and, you know, so you basically have to give the rook back. So rook takes F3, bishop takes F3, we got C6 in the position here. So this is a pretty critical point in the game. You know, D4 was actually played in the game, but you know, Carlsen actually really paid for, you know, this, allowing this pawn to survive, because you have the very like exclam move rook to F1, and yeah, there's just not really there's not really a way to really defend it. I mean, you can push the pawn here, but you know, you're just gonna capture here, and then I mean, you're moving up here. And I mean, those pawns are just too much for the rook to handle on their own. So we see rook to H8, king to G1, rook to H1 check. We have king to F2. We have rook takes F1 with check, and not king takes F1. We got bishop takes F1, because the problem is, the thing that you want to make sure you do is after bishop takes C6, that you can push this pawn here to B5. And that is exactly why bishop takes F1 was so superior to king takes F1. King takes F1 just basically just gives the game completely back almost. And so, you know, Carlsen thought for a while here. And so, you know, you kind of have to play this move. But it's all downhill from here. You got A6, B takes A6, B takes A6. You got D3, which just throws a pawn away. Bishop takes D3. King comes to E5. We have A7. And after bishop to C6, the first move that came into my mind was bishop to F1. And that's exactly what was played, bishop to F1. And I mean, just there's no way to maintain this bishop on this diagonal because, you know, this bishop is going to be coming here and it's going to be forcing a trade. And, you know, you're going to have to give the bishop up for this pawn and, you know, or just have to trade bishops. There's just not a way to do it. And so it's in this position that Magnus Carlsen resigns, and it took them into their final game that they played where they did draw. So that was that game, guys. And that was a pretty exciting game to watch. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, but you know, getting into the position. This is a clearance sacrifice position, and so yeah, like I said, if you want to set this up on your board and kind of see, you know, if you want to work it out or put it in a chess engine or whatever the situation is, I will see you guys in the next video with the answer to this problem. I appreciate it, guys. See you next time.